The Rexal world, just like any other universe, began as just an idea in the mind of a mere mortal living a finite life. The curiosity to understand his own existence and the role he plays in the vast universe is what drove him to create a universe of his own. Maybe creating this universe was the purpose of his existence. He just didn't know it. Or maybe he knew but wasn't sure. While he lived as a human, he kept on building his universe, and then when he stopped living, he became the universe he once worked on to create. I know it's tough to believe that the universe is a person and the person can be a universe, but this is the absolute truth of the Rexal world, that a god is someone who creates itself. In order to make sense of Rexal world, all you need to remember is vision can be deceiving. That's why perspective is what matters. I hope that was not confusing. Let's move on to the easy part. It's hard to tell the story of a universe when it doesn't have any beginning or end. Its past, present, and future coexist at the same time because time is an illusion. But the universe keeps on changing, and each change is called a cycle. So let's consider one cycle and begin with the illusion that we know is time. The universe began in darkness. Not physically, it was more like an informationless void with one singular being full of knowledge. So much that he was conscious of his own existence. This emptiness for him felt like a prison, and so he decided to create a world around him. The first thing that happened was time was born. The opportunity to balance the emptiness gave rise to knowledge scattering all over space, creating life. In the initial state, life was an opaque world full of random packets of information, thoughts, and ideas that the god was brainstorming for building a systematic world. This is the kind of life you aren't familiar with. One can instead perceive this place as one single planet full of complex life existing on its own. It's here the celestial gods lived a mortal life and developed their identities that would last for an iteration. This place is called Shuarthumi. Out of all this chaos of swirling information, order came to space. Information started to settle in concentrated pockets forming stars. During this time, the space was mostly empty, but many interesting events were happening in each of those solar systems called as life systems. With every passing moment, the space expanded, creating more and more emptiness. Meanwhile, life became more detailed in these concentrated life systems. All this time, God, who created this world, was also exploring his creation, as he too was surprised to see what his creation was creating when given the freedom of thought. It reminded him of the time when he himself was a mortal and created a fictional universe of his own out of nothing. God was the observer whose presence was necessary to remember all these events, beings, and the stories they wrote. All the fictional stories that were beyond God's imagination, and yet these mere mortals were able to create in their finite life with their finite knowledge. He had to remember all this, since from his memory he will keep on improving his world in future cycles. God, although omnipotent, had a limited memory. Hence, all the beautiful information he once created had to die as his memory was becoming full. One by one, these life systems disappeared until none were remained. Even the vacuum cleaners of the space, aka black hole, disappeared after turning the space back into the informationless void we began with. The only conscious being that remained was the silent observer, the God who started it all. The God that remains in the vast emptiness can also be perceived as an object in space, that is the spine of the universe, called swerve. Being the only conscious person in this vast emptiness, With full of excitement, he began with the next iteration of life in this Rexal world. Subscribe.